Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro is out with a new book reflecting on his life of public service and personal faith. Entitled, Where We Keep the Light, Stories from a Life of Service, the governor explores his faith and career in politics, from his tenure as a state representative to Pennsylvania Attorney General, to now leading a swing state and perhaps one day even the country. And the governor joins us now. It's great to have you back on the show. Congratulations on the book.
Great to be back. Thank you,
Mika. Before we get into the book, I do want to tap into your expertise, legal expertise and governing expertise, and talk about what's happening in Minneapolis. If you were in Tim Walz's position right now, the president has called. They've made conciliatory outreach. The president has. Homan has come in. Bovino is gone. There's a change in tone. There are social media posts sort of showing that. But at the same time, you're still accountable to the people of your state. They are your priority. And what would you do or say today to them? You have 2 U.S. citizens dead. There's no state investigation for either of those killings. Against a federal judge's ruling, evidence has been taken away. It hasn't been destroyed as far as we know, but the state doesn't have it and can't do their own proper investigation. ICE procedures across the board appear to be, the laws are being broken, bashing into homes, into cars without warrants, a memo saying maybe they don't need warrants, asking people for their papers, just an overall, some have used the word impunity, but definitely they seem to be untrained and to not have a sense of what the laws are. What would you do and say today in this position of dealing with outreach from the president and from Tom Homan, and yet no real action on the ground? I mean, these guys aren't even on administrative leave, as far as we know.
Right. Well, first off, let me just say, Tim and Gwen are really good friends to me and my wife, Lori. He was elected to lead the people of Minnesota, not I. I don't need to give him advice, and I'm not really in a position to do that. I'll give you my general view of the matter from away and without the benefit of the inside knowledge that he has. First, I think this mission is compromised. This mission is unconstitutional. This mission is illegal, and this mission needs to be terminated immediately. Just the fact that they've changed a few of the people who are technically in charge doesn't change the fact that you've got federal officials, as you noted in your lead up, who are literally stopping people because they have an accent, asking them for their papers. We don't do that in the United States of America. We have federal officials who are literally shooting dead people in the street because they are exercising their constitutional right to peaceful protest. So to me, it doesn't matter who's in charge. The mission needs to be terminated. And I think there are 3 ways to terminate this mission. And I think you don't need to wait longer than a week or so. Number 1, I believe this mission is violating the 10th Amendment rights of all Minnesotans. That can be argued in court and should be argued on an emergency basis. Number 2, the Congress of the United States has the power and the ability to curtail this operation through their spending bill that they'll be voting on. I believe that vote is on Friday. And third, the public has been sounding off and being heard. It is clear that the president of the United States, while he hasn't changed the core mission or his directive to those federal agents, he is obviously hearing from the people. The people need to continue to peacefully protest and be heard. The mission's compromised, and it needs to end immediately.
So, Governor, the Puck News obtained a private polling which suggested that your rhetoric, your messaging about ICE actually tops among Democrats in the last few days about exactly this. But you opened by saying, well, you're not the governor of Minnesota, so therefore you don't want to give advice to them. Philadelphia is on the short list of cities rumored to be next, potentially for an ICE surge. How would you handle that as governor? How would you cooperate? How would you speak to your citizens? What would you do?
For months, we've been preparing for the president to deploy federal troops or try and wrest away control of the Pennsylvania National Guard from me, the commander-in-chief of the Pennsylvania Guard. I'm here to answer your questions, but respectfully, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what we may or may not do. We're prepared. We recognize that if the federal government wants to try and run over us, as they have in other states, they may have that ability. But we believe that through the court and through our strong relationships with law enforcement, that we'll be able to protect the people of Pennsylvania. One of the things I wanted to say to Mika, but I think it really, is appropriate here in response to your question is, beyond everything else, the job of an executive, president, governor, mayor, is to keep people safe. And while we invest in budgets for police and community violence prevention, by the way, as we've done in Pennsylvania, where crime is down 12% and fatal gun violence is down 43%, the most important tool you need to keep people safe is trust with the community, trust between law enforcement and the people they are there to protect. What the federal government has done at the direction of the President of the United States is to erode and eviscerate that trust, and that makes people less safe. And so the president loves to go out and talk about how the Republicans are the party of law and order. I mean, give me a break. I think what we've shown in a Democratic-run state, what other Democratic governors are showing, is that we understand law and order, and law and order is built on trust, and they are eroding that trust in Minnesota.
A talking point we've heard from the president and his administration is to blame the lack of cooperation from Minnesota officials. That's why these protests have happened, they say. That's why this violence has happened. They point to Florida and Texas, where there are ICE operations. They say, well, they got cooperation from the government, and therefore it hasn't.
But, Jonathan, it is not the job of state police, just to use them as an example, to carry out federal immigration operations. Certainly the Pennsylvania State Police does not do that. It's not our job. And so if the federal government believes that that is a mission worth pursuing, then you have to do it within the bounds of our Constitution. You have to do it with proper policing tactics. You know, if you're a Pennsylvania State Trooper, I can't speak to Minnesota State Troopers, but if you're a Pennsylvania State Trooper, you have very strict rules on when you're allowed to be masked out in the community. Very strict rules on when you can be in plain clothes. Just basic policing practices are not being followed by these federal officials on the ground in Minnesota. And that's another reason why the trust is being eroded.
So we also, the president, we know, used incendiary rhetoric, which at times has been blamed for inciting violence. We know about January 6th, of course. We've had more recent examples as well. As we were just speaking a few moments ago, earlier yesterday, he was denigrating Congresswoman Omar. And then we saw at her town hall yesterday, of course, an attack on her. I'm not going to suggest that what the president had to say necessarily inspired what happened to you and your family, but you could speak firsthand right now what happened at the governor's mansion, that arson attack, which I know you talk about in your book as well. Just speak to this sort of perilous time we're in right now, where it does feel like a chief executive's job should be to de-escalate, to keep people safe, as you say, and it feels like exactly the opposite's occurring.
I think it is fundamentally the responsibility of executives to keep people safe, and one of the ways you do that is by bringing down the rhetoric and making clear that we have a zero tolerance policy for any form of political violence, no matter who it is targeting. Look, it shouldn't be hard for the president or anyone else to condemn the killing of Charlie Kirk and condemn the killing of Melissa Hortman, to say that it's not okay what happened to Gabby Giffords and Steve Scalise, to come out and make absolutely clear that we do not allow this in this country. I saw a video of what happened to Congresswoman Omar yesterday. That's unbelievably scary. There is no place for that. The President of the United States needs to condemn that, as does everyone else. I don't care if you agree or disagree with the Congresswoman. That is not okay. She's out there meeting her constituents. They're exercising their constitutional rights to meet with their elected representatives and speak their minds. No one deserves to be targeted for political violence. My family and I read about it in this book. My family and I experienced that firsthand. Now, thank God we don't have the physical scars that Kirk or Hortman or even the President of the United States from Butler has. We don't have the physical scars. We walked away with some emotional scars from that experience. But one of the antidotes to that political violence is to condemn it, no matter who is the one putting it forward or no matter who is being targeted.
Governor, many Americans, millions of them, clearly are frustrated by what they see as not enough action and not enough of a strong position taken by America's only opposition party, which is the Democratic Party, of which you are a member. What should we be seeing from Democratic leaders in Congress? And what can they do beyond, for example, later this week, refusing to continue to fund the expansion of ICE's operations? Is there anything else they can do or say? What is the position they should be taking? Is it to dismantle ICE as an agency? Is it holding hearings? What should they be doing?
I think what's clear is they have an opportunity this week to stop this operation in Minnesota and be able to limit the manner in which Kristi Noem and the folks at ICE or CBP are able to use federal dollars to wreak havoc on our communities. Remember, it's not just the dollars that they appropriate, it's the language associated with those dollars that directs the spending. It does seem to me that there is an opportunity now for Democrats to lead on this issue as more and more Republicans are coming out and being critical of this administration in Washington and their operation in Minnesota. They should be able to find bipartisan consensus this week, and the Democrats need to lead on that front. This is a test. This is a moment where I believe our congressional leaders can stand up and curtail this. I think Senator Cortez Masto has it right. Take the dollars that were going to be appropriated beyond the, frankly, insane amount of money that's already been appropriated to DHS, the irresponsible amount, and send that to local police. The president loves to talk a good game about law and order and about keeping communities safe. Come look at Pennsylvania, where we are keeping communities safe, or other states where they're doing that. Add dollars to our local police departments, add dollars to our efforts, and that will actually help make communities safe. So this is an opportunity to step up and do that. And then the last thing I want to say on this is, yes, the members of Congress have a lot of power, especially this week as that bill comes up. But the people are the ones with the real power. And I believe we need to focus in these midterms, not just on the swing districts and the swing states like mine. We've got 4 congressional races that could come down to a point or less. But I think we need a national referendum on Donald Trump and the excesses and the chaos and the cruelty of this Republican Party under Donald Trump's leadership. So I don't care if you're in a district that's 80% Democrat, 80% Republican. We need a national referendum this November. The people's voices need to be heard.
Governor, turning back to the book, I was struck by, it's obviously a deeply personal story, and much of it is spent on your faith.
Yes.
Why do you feel like that's important right now, to talk about your Jewish faith, particularly at this moment, this fraught moment for so many?
Well, let me be clear. I'm not ashamed of my faith. I'm proud of my faith. And my faith and the way I was raised, my family, my parents, taught me to do for others, to care for others. I don't sit here as someone who is claiming to be more religious than someone else or an expert in every line of text. But I am someone who believes in the universality of faith, the things that bring us together. I think it's a universal message, no matter what your religion is, or even if you practice at all, that we want to put a roof over the head of the homeless. We want to feed the hungry. We want to love thy neighbor. And throughout my career, I have been guided to do that work by my own religion, but I have found a commonality in faith, those elemental truths that I think people share, that I write about in this book, the people I've met along the way who don't worship like me, but believe in similar causes to help their neighbors out. And that, to me, is something that I think is lacking right now in America. And yet I see in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as I travel around, the goodness of people every day practicing that shared faith, that shared humanity, the light that they bring every day. I see it in my work, and Lori and I and the kids felt it in the hours and the days and the weeks after we were targeted. People of all different walks of life, of all different religions, sharing their faith with us to help us heal and lift us up. And that's a powerful force that we need more of in this country.
It truly is. And lastly, I'm contractually obligated to note that public officials often write books when they're considering seeking higher office. So is there any news you'd like to make right now, this morning on Morning Joe? It would be an exclusive. We'll give you the floor.
No, and I'm contractually obligated as a Philadelphia sports fan to not speak to a Celtics fan. So it's a little bit hard for me to
We've both had
here
surprisingly good seasons.
Yes.
Surprisingly good seasons.
We're doing all right. We're doing all right.
All right. Well, we appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Mika.
All right. The new book, Where We Keep the Light, Stories from a Life of Service, is available now. Democratic Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.